Most people talk about the BMW S1000RR like it's just a numbers bike. Horsepower, top speed, lap times. But the thing that surprised me wasn't the speed at all. It was how easy this bike tries to make you feel fast, even when you probably shouldn't be. That's the part no one really slows down to talk about. When I first started comparing the S1000RR to other leader bikes, I expected it to feel aggressive and demanding, like it was constantly testing me. Instead, what I noticed was how calm it feels at normal speeds, almost too calm. And that actually made me question who this bike is really for. Most people assume the S1000RR is built only for track addicts or elite riders. I don't fully agree. Yes, it's brutally capable, but BMW clearly spent a lot of time making this bike approachable. The electronics, the throttle response, even the riding position feel like they're trying to invite you in rather than scare you away. And that's where things get interesting. One mistake I see a lot of riders make is thinking this bike will automatically make them a better rider. I get the temptation. You see all the rider aids, the modes, the traction control, the slide control, and you think the bike will save you every time. But relying on that mindset is risky. What surprised me was how subtle the electronics are. They don't feel intrusive. They don't slap your wrist. They quietly step in, and if you're not paying attention, you might not even realize how close you are to the edge. That can build false confidence. The practical takeaway here is simple. The S1000RR rewards awareness, not ego. If you ride it like it's invincible, it will eventually remind you that physics still applies. Another thing most people miss is how refined the engine actually is. Everyone talks about peak horsepower, but what stood out to me was the mid-range. It's strong, smooth, and usable. You don't have to scream it at redline all the time to feel the performance. When I compared it mentally to bikes that feel dead below high RPMs, the BMW felt more flexible. That makes it more enjoyable on real roads, not just on a track. You can roll on the throttle and feel a clean, controlled surge instead of a violent hit. The misconception is that leader bikes are only fun when ridden irresponsibly. With the S1000RR, that's not true. There's enjoyment in precision, in smooth inputs, in timing your acceleration instead of just blasting it. Here's something else that caught my attention: the chassis feedback. This bike talks to you, but not in a dramatic way. It's subtle. You feel what the front tire is doing. You sense weight transfer. And once you notice that, you start trusting the bike more. But trust cuts both ways. The mistake is thinking trust means pushing harder. Real trust means understanding limits. The S1000RR feels stable even when you're approaching speeds that are honestly unnecessary on public roads. That stability can trick you into thinking you're well within control when you're not. A practical insight here is to ride this bike with intention. Pick your moments. Respect the fact that it masks speed incredibly well. Check your speed more often than you think you need to. Design-wise, the S1000RR doesn't scream for attention the way some rivals do. I actually appreciate that. It looks sharp, focused, almost clinical, and that matches the riding experience. It's not trying to be emotional chaos. It's engineered precision. Some riders see that as boring. I don't. What surprised me was how this clinical feeling actually reduces fatigue. Everything feels placed where it should be. Controls make sense. Nothing feels awkward or rushed. Over time, that matters more than flashy drama. The misconception is that excitement only comes from rawness. Sometimes excitement comes from confidence, from knowing the bike will respond exactly how you expect. One area people rarely talk about enough is braking, and honestly, the brakes deserve respect. They're strong, but more importantly, they're predictable. You don't feel like the bike is trying to throw you forward. You feel controlled deceleration. The mistake some riders make is underestimating how much braking performance changes your riding style. With strong, predictable brakes, you can focus more on lines and less on panic. But that only works if you actually practice braking properly instead of relying on electronics. Practical takeaway? Learn to brake smoothly on this bike. It transforms how confident you feel, especially at higher speeds. Let's talk about comfort, because this is where opinions usually clash. No, it's not a touring bike, but it's also not as punishing as people claim. I noticed the seat and ergonomics are aggressive, but tolerable. Short rides are easy, longer rides demand discipline. The misconception is thinking you'll get used to it without adjusting your riding habits. You won't. You need to take breaks, you need to stretch, you need to ride consciously. The bike won't adapt to you, you adapt to it. And that's okay.
One thing I genuinely respect about the S1000RR is how honest it feels once you understand it. It doesn't pretend to be something it isn't. It's a high-performance machine with manners, not a toy pretending to be practical. What surprised me overall wasn't the speed or technology, it was the balance. BMW didn't build a bike that constantly begs you to prove something. It lets you decide how far you want to go. That's rare. If you're the kind of rider who wants drama every second, this bike might feel too composed. But if you enjoy precision, feedback, and controlled power, the S1000RR makes a strong case for itself. The biggest practical takeaway I can share is this: respect the calm. When a bike feels this stable and refined, it's easy to forget what it's capable of. Ride it with humility, and it becomes incredibly rewarding. At the end of the day, the S1000RR isn't about chasing limits all the time. For me, it's about knowing those limits are there and choosing when or if to approach them.